Whereas in procedure, it concentrates on procedure. Whereas in object-oriented, it concentrates on data rather than procedure. Data members is nothing but the contact numbers. For example, the contact numbers can be called as data. And member functions can be called as set of functions. Data encapsulation is nothing but combining data and function into single unit. Welcome back to one and all. Myself Vasanta, lecturer in Computer Science, Vidhyaashram, Pre-University College, Temple of Excellence, Mysore. Today, we are going to start with new chapter, that is basic concept of hoops. This is the sixth chapter on your syllabus. Whereas on this chapter, the total weightage in the annual exam is 6 marks. In part A, 1 question they will ask, as well as in part D, 1 question they will ask in the annual exam. That is 1 marks 1 question, as well as 5 marks 1 question. Total weightage 6 marks in the annual exam. In this chapter, you will come to know the features of hoops, the advantages of hoops, disadvantages of hoops, application of hoops. These are the major concepts you will study on this chapter. That is feature, advantage, disadvantage, as well as application. Whereas on this class, you will come to know the introduction regarding hoops, object-oriented programming, the difference between object-oriented programming as well as procedural-oriented programming, as well as the basic concept of hoops. Whereas in the exam, you may want to get a question, what do you mean by object-oriented programming? Or what do you mean by procedural-oriented programming? Write the features like what do you mean by class, what do you mean by object, what do you mean by inheritance. Like that, for 1 marks they may want to ask. Whereas, what do you mean by procedural-oriented programming language? The name itself suggesting that procedural-oriented programming language. Procedural means it mainly concentrates on procedure rather than the data. What is the first step? What is the second step? What is the third step? Like that only, it will mainly concentrate not on the data. For example, if you want to reach from 4th floor to ground floor, then what is the procedure? First, you are presently on 4th floor, then first you have to reach 3rd floor, then 2nd floor, 1st floor, then ground floor. That is a procedure. It mainly concentrates on procedure rather than data. And here, it will perform the task by using top-down approach. Top-down, what do you mean by this top-down approach? Whatever work we have, that work will divide into small unit. For example, if I want to arrange marriage function, on that time, what we will do? I will make 3 parts. For example, one has to take care regarding card distribution, one has to take care regarding the stage arrangement, one has to take care regarding food arrangement. Like that, the large program are dividing into small unit. In procedural oriented, the large program are dividing into small subunit. That subunit can be called as modules. And the technique of dividing the large problem into small unit, that technique is called as modularity. Whereas in procedural oriented, it will divide the program into small unit, and here it follows top-down approach, mainly focus on the development of functions. Very little concentration is given to the data. What is the procedure? What is the step? Mainly it will concentrate on that, not on the data. Here we have one program, large program, that what we are doing, here we are dividing this large program into small unit. It means that in procedural oriented, concentrates on procedure rather than data. It solves the problem by using modular technique. It means that you are going to divide the large problem into small unit and then it will perform in procedural oriented. Whereas in object oriented programming, mainly in object oriented programming means we used to put as hoops are the example for object oriented. Whereas C programming is procedural oriented, C++ is object oriented, C#, these are the example for object-oriented programming. In hoops, it uses structured programming concept and it combines them with several new concepts. It mainly combines with several new concepts. The name itself, object-oriented programming, means it concentrates on object, or I can say it as data rather than procedure. Whereas in procedure, it concentrates on procedure. Whereas in object-oriented, it concentrates on data rather than procedure. In hoops, the data is not allowed to move freely between the function. Freely it cannot move from one function to another function. It is hidden. Hoop binds the data and function that operates the data to form an object. Here, whereas in C programming, what you have, you will follow top-down approach. That is procedural oriented concept. The main program are dividing into small unit. Whereas in hoops, after dividing that, the result once again go back to the main program. That means here it will follow bottom-up approach. Whereas procedural top-down approach, the large will divide into small unit. Whereas in bottom up, whatever the subprogram you have, that subprogram after doing their work, it will generate the result to the main program. That means here it follows bottom up approach. If you take any object, on that object, you may going to get the data members as well as member function. Each object, consider here we have 3 objects, all the 3 objects having data as well as functions. In this, the main program will going to dividing into object format, sub-functions. Then after performing the task, it will generate the result to the main program. When they come on, the difference between procedural programming and object-oriented programming, already I told you regarding the large programs are divided into small sub-program known as functions. The large work will dividing into sub-units, small unit in procedural-oriented programming. When they come on object-oriented programming, the programs are divided into objects here. Programs are dividing into objects and these objects can be communicate with each other with the help of functions. Next one, data is not hidden. Nobody will going to hidden here, hide the data. Directly, whichever function they want, they can able to access the data in procedural programming. Any functions can access. External functions can be able to access the data. Whereas, when they come on object-oriented, data are hidden. Directly, we cannot access the data. It is always combined with the functions. Then only, with the help of function only, we can able to access. But data, directly, we are not able to access here. And here it follows top-down approach in procedural oriented. In object oriented, it follows bottom-up approach. After doing the calculation, the results are generating from subprogram to main program. Whereas in this procedural, it emphasizes on the procedure rather than data. Mainly concentrates on procedure. Whereas here, it mainly concentrates on data rather than procedure. This they are going to ask for 5 marks also, right? The difference between procedural and object-oriented. In procedural, concentrates on procedure, whereas in object, it mainly concentrates on data, not on procedure. And here, data is not hidden, whereas in hoops, data are hidden. Whenever if you want to access the data, then with the help of function only, we can able to access the data. And here, it follows top-down, whereas here, it follows bottom-up approach. Then here, it emphasizes is on procedure rather than data, whereas here, it emphasizes on data rather than procedure. These are the major difference between procedural-oriented programming as well as object-oriented programming. Next, we will discuss the features of hoops one by one. When they come on, the basic characteristics. Whereas on this chapter, you will study only 4 concepts. One is the features, advantage, disadvantage as well as application. For 5 marks also, they will go to ask the advantage, disadvantage, application as well as feature. For 1 marks, you may going to get any one of the features or any one of the advantages you have to mention. Like that, you will get the questions. Whereas when they come on the basic concept of hoops, in the exam, they will ask you, write the basic features of hoops or the characteristics of hoops also they may going to ask. One by one we'll discuss now. The first one, that is object. The second one is class, data abstraction, data encapsulation, inheritance, overloading, polymorphism, dynamic binding, as well as message passing. These are the few characteristics of hoops. Now, we'll discuss about what do you mean by object. Because for 1 marks, you may going to get a question in such a way that what do you mean by object or define object. Or for 5 marks, you may going to get a question, write the features of hoops. Then object is an building block for designing a program. Or we can say it is a real-time entity. It is a real-time entity which having some characteristics as well as behavior. For example, this pen. This is also an object. Here, this pen is used to write it on the board. Is it no? That means the characteristic of this pen. For example, if you consider a chair, that also it is an object because there also it having its own characteristics as well as behavior. Object is a real-time entity which having some characteristics as well as behavior. And in this object, it is a collection of data members as well as member function. For example, consider one mobile. Here I am to consider a mobile. This mobile having data members. Data members as well as member functions. Data members as well as member function. Data members is nothing but the contact numbers. For example, the contact numbers can be called as datas. And member functions can be called as set of functions like where it may be incoming call, outgoing call, WhatsApp, Bluetooth, all are functions. It means that object is a real-time entity which having some characteristics and behavior, and each object having data members as well as member functions. A collection of data members as well as member function we can say. That is a main feature of object. Next, we will discuss about class. A class is a collection of similar objects. It is a collection of similar objects with same behavior and characteristics. If I am going to consider only one mobile, that is an object. The collection of mobile, if I am going to consider, then it can be called as class. Class is a collection of related objects. For example, consider here we have one mobile. Here also we have one mobile. Here also we have one mobile. Consider we have 3 mobiles. This is mobile 1, this is mobile 2 and this is mobile 3. In all the 3, we have data members as well as member functions. In first mobile also we have contacts as well as function. In second mobile also we have data members as well as member functions. Data as well as function we have. In third mobile also we have data members as well as member functions. The collection of related objects. The collection of related objects can be called as class here. Class is a collection of related objects which having same behavior and characteristics. All the mobiles, for example, one mobile is Samsung, one is Nokia and one more is another mobile. But all the 3 having same characteristics as well as same behavior. For example, mobile 1 wants some data which is present in mobile 3. But directly, the mobile 1 cannot send the data to mobile 3. But if I want to send the data, then with the help of function only we can able to access. See, directly the objects cannot able to interact with each other. It has to interact with the help of functions only. For example, from WhatsApp or Bluetooth or by using Messenger, we can able to send the data which is present on mobile 1 to mobile 3. Here, interaction takes place with the help of functions only. Data are hidden here. If I want to access with the help of functions only, I can able to access. For example, mobile 2 wants some data which is present on mobile 3. Then, with the help of functions, here, the interaction takes place between the functions here. The mobile 1 will send the data to mobile 3 or from mobile 3 to mobile 2. Data are transferring. Here, it means that you come to know that the functions or operations are performed with the help of this member function only, not directly by the object here. Direct agi objects interact ಮಾಡೋದಕ್ಕಾಗಲ್ಲ. If it wants to interact, then it has to take the help of functions only. whereas class is a collection of related objects. All the objects must and should have same behavior and characteristics. Each object, each class having data as well as function. Data can be called as data members and functions can be called as member functions. Next, we will discuss about data abstraction. What do you mean by abstraction? Abstracting. For example, I used to say extracting or taking anta kuda helbodu. It is a abstraction is a process of representing. It is a process of representing the essential features without considering the background detail. For example, I want to use bike. There, I just want to use the bike, but I don't want how exactly in the background it is arranged, which type of engine they are used, what is the technique they are following. Regarding that, you don't know. Is it no? That means here, considering only the essential features, whichever features we want, only that features we are considering, but we are not considering how exactly in the background it is working. That is data abstraction. It is a process of representing the essential features. Whichever features we want, only that feature we are going to consider. We are not bothered how exactly in the background it is working. For example, mobile. We want mobile, we are using WhatsApp, Bluetooth, all the functions we are using. But we don't know, we don't want that. How exactly the data are transferring from one mobile to another mobile, which is the technique they are following, where first it will store. Regarding that, we don't want any information. That is data abstraction, considering only the essential features without considering the background detail. Abstraction permits the user to access an object without knowing its internal working. Already I told you, in the mobile I am using WhatsApp, Bluetooth, all the functions I am using. But for example, if I want to send some data or some contact from one mobile to another mobile, with the help of WhatsApp I used to send. But how exactly it is moving from one mobile to another mobile, we don't want. That is a background working that we don't want. That is data abstraction. Next one, data encapsulation. It is nothing but combining both data and function into single unit. It is a process of combining, or I can say it as merging the data and function into single unit. Because already I told you, in the mobile, we have data as well as contact. If I want to send any data from one mobile to another mobile, first it has to combine data as well as function. Then only I can able to send. Is it no? That is data encapsulation is nothing but combining data and function into single unit. Data encapsulation prevents direct access of data. Directly we cannot access any data which is there in the mobile. If I want to access, then it has to be combined with function, then only I can able to access. Data should be accessed only through the functions. It mainly hides the data. Directly we cannot able to access. That is data encapsulation. Encapsulation means nothing but combining, merging both the data and function into single unit. The next concept, inheritance. Inheritance is nothing but it is a process of acquiring, or I can say taking the properties from base class to derived class. Usually heredity anta helbodu. For example, here we have base class. Here we have base class and one more is derived class. Derived class. Here the properties are transferring from base class to derived class. The properties are transferring. It's a process of acquiring, taking the properties from father to son. For example, consider we have the father base class and one more class, derived class, that is son. Here, the properties are transferring from base class to derived class. A process of acquiring, taking the properties from where? This parent class, or we can say it as base class or existing class. The properties are transferring from existing class to a new class, or I can call it as child class, athwa derived class, child class or derived class, or I can call it as subclass also. Or I can say it is a process of creating a new class by using existing class also, I can say. For example, in heredity, what happens? The properties are transferring from father to son. I am going to give an example for that. Consider the father having some properties like he can write drawing as well as he can cook very well, like that. These are the properties of father. When you want to write the properties for a son, in only one line we will write this son having the properties of father. Then no need to write the same properties already the parent have. In only one line we use write this son having the properties of father. Then all the properties are transferred from parent to, that is from father to son. It means that the code can be reused here. No need to write the code again and again. It is a process of acquiring the properties from base class to derived class. The base class can be called as parent class or existing class. The derived class can be called as child class or son class also we can say, or subclass also we can say. In this way, some advantage like code can be reused here. Only one time we will write the code for father. For the remaining properties, when you want to write the son, only one line you will write this son having the properties of father. It means that directly it will take all the data, all the properties, all the behavior. Here, the code can be reused here. No need to write the same code once again. It means that no need to write the code once again. It means that code can be reused. What about time consumption? No need to write. That's why obviously time consumption will reduce us here. Then if you want to write regarding the space consumption also is reduced here because no need to write the code. That's why the memory is also reduces. Time can be reduced. Code can be reused as well as memory consumption is also less. When they come on types of inheritance, there are several types like single level inheritance, multi-level inheritance, multiple inheritance, hierarchical inheritance, hybrid inheritance, like that. Several types of inheritance where it is a process of creating a new class using existing class. It is a process of acquiring the properties from base class to derived class. These are the one of the features of hoops. Then now you come to know what do you mean by class, object, data encapsulation, then inheritance. Next, we will discuss about polymorphism. Poly means more than one. Polymorphism is a Greek word. It means that ability to take more than one form. I am going to give an example. For example, 2 plus 3. Then what is the value here? We are going to get 5 is the final output. One more I am going to write Anu plus Shri. Then what is the final output here? I am going to get Anu Shri. But in the first case, what we have done? We are adding the values. That is 2 plus 3. Then we are adding the value. Here also we have plus operator. Here also we have plus operator. But what in the first case exactly it is doing? It is adding the value. Whereas in second case, Anu plus Shri. Here it is not going to adding, it is combining, concatenating the given string. Anu plus Shri. Only one single word I am going to get, that is Anu Shri. It's the ability of this operator to behave more than one form, depending upon which data type the variable are there, whether it's a number format or character format or integer format or string format, which format it is. Depending upon that, that particular operator will behave depending upon the situation. That is the ability of an operator and a function to take multiple form. That is polymorphism. Now is it clear? In for example, shape, there we are drawing. For triangle also we are writing the drawing. For rectangle also we are writing the drawing. For circle also we are writing the drawing. It means that we have given only one drawing in all the case. But depending upon the data type, the argument, that particular function here it will perform. That is polymorphism. The next one we will discuss about overloading. What do you mean by this overloading? When they come on overloading, there are two types, operator overloading as well as function overloading. There are two types under overloading. Operator overloading means when an existing operator operates on new data type. when an existing operator operates on new data type is called as operator overloading. But when we come on function overloading, when two or more functions have same name but differ in number of arguments or data type of the argument. That I will show with an example. Consider we have one function add. Here we will write int, comma int. One more function I will write add only int, comma float. One more function I will take add only float, comma float. One more function I will take add only here int, comma int, comma int. Then what is the common thing as well as what is the difference thing? In all the 4 functions, the function name is add only. Function overloading means 2 or more function name are same here. See, in all the 4 cases, function name is add only. Whereas in the first case, we had 2 arguments. All the 2 arguments are integer data type only. In the second case, we have once again 2 arguments, but first argument is integer and second argument is float data type. If we come to the third one, all the 2 arguments are float data type. But when we come on fourth case, here we have 3 arguments, all the 3 are integer data type. Then common thing is all the function name are same, but differ in number of arguments. Number of arguments are different irbodu, athwa the data type which you used here, it may be different in the data type. Function overloading means 2 or more functions name should be same but differ in number of arguments. Function names are same but differ in number of arguments. See, here the number of arguments are different. Here 2 arguments, here 3 arguments. Arguments are different or the data types are different. That is function overloading. When they come on overloading, 2 types, operator overloading as well as function overloading. Next, we will discuss about dynamic binding, the next feature. In dynamic, first of all, what do you mean by binding? Binding is a process of combining the small programs. For example, already I told you, saying the difference between object-oriented as well as procedural-oriented. In procedural-oriented, it will approach in top-down approach, whereas in object-oriented, it will follow bottom-up approach. On that time, the sub-program has to be combined and the result has to be generated to the main program. Whereas binding is nothing but connecting one program to another program, combining, connecting. Then there are 2 types of binding. One is static binding and one more is dynamic binding. Static binding is a binding that takes place during compilation and it is also called as early binding. At the time of compilation, it will take place. Whereas dynamic binding means the code of procedure call is known at the time of program execution. That is dynamic binding. There are 2 types. One is static and one more is dynamic. Next, we will discuss about the message passing. Already I told you, from one program to another program, the message, the information has to be passed. That is nothing but message passing. Object can communicate with each other. Object can communicate with each other and message is nothing but execution of a function here. After executing the program, sub-program, the result has to be generated. The arguments, the values has to be passed from one program to another program. Message communication involves specifying the function name of the object, name of the function and the argument to be sent. If I want to send any data from one program to another program, then must and should, which is the object I have to mention, what is the name of that, how many values I am passing, regarding that must and should you have to mention. Then only we can able to pass the values from one object to another object. Whereas in this class, you come to know what do you mean by object, class, inheritance, polymorphism, function overloading, data binding, what do you mean by message passing, all those things you come to know. Whereas in the next session, you will come to know regarding what are the advantages of inheritance, what are the disadvantages of inheritance, as well as the application of inheritance. Next class, you will come to know regarding the advantages, disadvantages as well as application of PUCs. Thank you for all of you. Next class, we will meet you once again. Thank you.